drove iron spikes through the corpses. They buried the bodies face down, and in some villages, they severed the tendons so the dead could not walk. These were not acts of cruelty. They were acts of fear. Halloween is often treated as a quirky mix of costumes, candy, and cartoon ghosts, but its roots reach far deeper, into Celtic traditions so old they predate written history. The celebration we know today began as Samhain, the most sacred and most dangerous night of the Celtic year. Long before Halloween was about parties and pumpkins, it was a ritual steeped in dread. For the ancient Celts, the boundary between the living and the dead was not symbolic. It was a permeable veil, a very real danger. And on Samhain, that veil collapsed. Tonight we will peel back the mask of this festival, tracing the real history behind Halloween traditions, unearthing the rituals meant to contain what lay beyond the grave, and exposing the terrifying beliefs that shaped how we bury, protect, and remember our dead. Let us begin. The night the dead walked. What archaeologists discovered in Iron Age burial sites across Ireland, Scotland, and Wales is not consistent with peaceful remembrance. Many bodies were found bound, beheaded, or deliberately mutilated after death. According to archaeologist Miranda Aldhouse Green, these were not isolated acts of violence, but signs of ritual aggression, meant not to punish the living, but to neutralize the dead. So why this fear? Because in the Celtic worldview, the dead were not gone. They walked among us with grievances, hungers, and unfinished business. And Samhain was their hour. Why ancient cultures feared the dead isn't just a matter of superstition. It reveals something deep within the human psyche, the anxiety that death is not the end and that it can reach back. Halloween and the subconscious are intimately tied in this way. The masks we wear, the fires we light, the stories we tell, they are all strategies to manage that fear. Scholars analyzing this period highlight how the fires of Samhain were not just ceremonial, they were protective. Herds were brought in, harvests were finalized, hearths were extinguished and relit with sacred flame. It was not celebration, it was survival. And into this framework entered something darker. Over time, the line blurred between ancestral spirits and something more malevolent. Creatures, entities. And to face them, terrifying Halloween traditions emerged. Doorways smeared with blood, cursed Halloween objects left outside to draw spirits away. Costumes not worn for fun, but as spiritual camouflage. If Halloween seems scary today, it is only because remnants of this older fear still echo through it. But then came the change, because when the church arrived, it didn't just condemn Samhain, it absorbed it, and what it buried was not the belief in spirits, but the control of them. In the next chapter, we'll uncover how the church changed Halloween, and why the line between saints and specters was never as clear as they wanted it to be. What if the most sacred nights of remembrance were built on fear, not love? The night the church seized the graveyard. It didn't burn Samhain to the ground. It baptized it. When the Roman Catholic Church expanded into Celtic lands, it faced a dilemma. Samhain was too deeply rooted to erase. So instead of outlawing the festival, the church repurposed it, renaming it All Hallows Eve, placing All Saints' Day on November 1st, and later adding All Souls' Day on the 2nd. The theology changed, but the fear stayed. How the church changed Halloween wasn't a simple act of suppression. It was an act of transformation. Pagan fire rituals became candlelit vigils. Offerings for the dead became prayers. Spirits were reframed as purgatorial souls in need of salvation. but something far older still lingered beneath the surface. Primary sources from the 9th and 10th centuries reflect this tension. Ecclesiastical records speak of parishioners still leaving food outside for wandering spirits, of priests warning against dark seasonal rites, and of devilish masks worn by peasants who feared the return of the vengeful dead. Historian Ronald Hutton, writing extensively on Celtic Christian syncretism, argues that the Church's approach to Samhain was a campaign of reinterpretation, not eradication. The result was a hybrid, a Christianized Halloween that wore the cross, but still walked with ghosts. And in some regions, those ghosts walked too far. In the Bavarian Alps, 12th century reports describe Halloween exorcisms performed on children said to be possessed by the wandering. In France, clergy warned of All-Hallow-Tide processions, where villagers would wear masks not to honor saints, but to scare spirits away. And in England, stories spread of real Halloween possessions, where the souls of the unburied were believed to take shelter in the living until appeased. What had been a pagan ritual of fear management was becoming a theological battleground. And in the process, a new kind of darkness emerged, one sanctioned by doctrine. But this evolution also gave rise to something far more sinister, because while the Church tried to tame the night, not everything could be contained. Some rituals twisted, others mutated, and a few turned deadly. In the next chapter, we'll descend into real Halloween murders, cursed objects, and the terrifying stories that didn't fade with time. Because some masks don't just hide us, they change us. If this journey made you pause, if it made you feel something, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who still believes Halloween is just a costume and a pumpkin. Because the more of us who remember what these rituals meant, the harder it is for history to stay buried in the dark. Now, let's continue. The Mask That Killed. In 1974, a father handed his son a piece of candy laced with cyanide. The boy collapsed on Halloween night, wearing his costume, trick-or-treat bucket still in hand. It wasn't a legend, it was real. And it would spark one of the most persistent Halloween myths and legends in modern history. The fear of poisoned candy, of strangers lurking in the dark, of Halloween murders, real stories buried beneath costumes and suburban smiles. But behind the myth lies a deeper truth, one that ties ancient fear, modern violence, and ritual psychology together in ways we rarely dare to name. Because Halloween isn't just about dressing up. Sometimes the mask becomes a weapon. Cursed Halloween objects are not merely the stuff of horror fiction. There are real reports, documented, investigated, of items passed from person to person, always on or near October 31st, always with violent or unexplained outcomes. A vintage costume that caused hallucinations and seizures. A plastic skull found in an attic with human remains sealed inside. A rubber mask traced back to a series of arson events, each one starting in a house where it was worn. As noted by researcher Linda Rodriguez McRobbie, these cases often follow a pattern. Belief in the object's power is what activates it. And Halloween, being the one night society permits the crossing of lines, becomes the stage. Horror ritual psychology suggests that masks aren't just disguises, they're psychological triggers. In studies published in the Journal of Ritual Studies, participants reported feeling freed from identity, more likely to commit acts they normally wouldn't when masked. Halloween, in this view, becomes not a safety valve, but an invitation. And that's the paradox. Why Halloween is scary isn't just about ghosts or gore. It's about what we let out of ourselves. So what happens when fear stops being play? What happens when the stories are no longer symbolic, when the rituals go too far? In the next chapter, we'll examine the Halloween rituals gone wrong, the seances that spiraled into psychosis, the games that ended in tragedy, and the exorcisms that left more questions than answers. What if the darkest Halloween story is the one no one meant to tell? Possessed by the season. It was meant to be a game. A group of teenagers gathered around a Ouija board on Halloween night, half serious, half laughing. But when one girl began to speak in a voice that wasn't hers, the laughter died, and it never came back. This isn't an urban legend. It's one of many documented cases where Halloween rituals gone wrong spiraled into chaos, where the line between roleplay and reality dissolved, leaving behind trauma, confusion, and sometimes death. Across cultures, Halloween has always been a liminal night, a psychological pressure point where fear, identity, and belief converge. Real Halloween possessions have been reported in countries as far apart as Mexico, Germany, and the United States. In each case, the pattern echoes. The ritual is light-hearted, the atmosphere playful, until something changes. A voice, a movement, a blackout, then panic. According to anthropologist Felicitas Goodman, ritual states, especially when performed in groups, can induce a powerful trance. She noted that horror ritual psychology often depends less on external forces and more on what the human mind is ready to believe. Halloween, with its heightened symbolism and centuries of fear conditioning, is the perfect trigger. Halloween exorcisms are not just media fabrications. Historical records from the 19th and early 20th centuries describe multiple incidents in rural Europe where children were cleansed after behaving violently or speaking in unknown tongues during All Hallows' Eve. In some cases, they were simply afraid. In others, they bore lifelong psychological scars. But here's the chilling part. It doesn't always take belief in the supernatural for something to go wrong. Sometimes it's just the permission to step outside yourself, the safety of the costume, the darkness of the room, the story you tell. And once you cross that threshold, not everyone finds their way back. In the final chapter, we'll return to the roots and to us. From ancient fires to plastic pumpkins, we'll trace how Halloween became a mirror of our collective fears. What we honor, what we suppress, and what we still carry with us. What if the most terrifying part of Halloween is how much of it we still believe without even knowing? The echoes we still celebrate. We light plastic pumpkins where sacred bonfires once blazed. We knock on strangers' doors in costumes meant to confuse the dead. And we laugh, because to laugh is safer than to remember. But the memory is still there. The dark history of Halloween isn't buried beneath candy wrappers. It's woven into the rituals we've inherited without question. What we call tradition is often survival in disguise. What we call fun was once protection. Why Halloween is scary isn't just about jump scares or spooky stories. It's because the emotional architecture of this night has never changed. We still gather in groups. We still disguise our identities. We still flirt with death. Only now, we do it with party hats and hashtags. Halloween and death culture are inseparable. As noted by cultural historian David J. Skoll, the holiday is the only time of year when society gives permission to confront mortality publicly. But that confrontation is carefully curated, managed through commerce, masked by irony. What began as Samhain, a Celtic ritual to guard against the returning dead, was transformed by the church, twisted by superstition, and finally hollowed out by capitalism. Today, Halloween sells cursed Halloween objects in bulk. It packages real Halloween possessions as clickbait. It turns true horror Halloween into haunted house attractions. Never mind the very real grief and fear those tropes were built on. And yet, something ancient still pulses beneath it all. Because when we put on masks, we feel different. When we walk into the night, pretending not to fear it, some part of us still does. Maybe we always will. So as the sun sets on 31st October and children knock on doors with laughter in their lungs, pause for a moment. Think of the fires, the broken bones, the masked faces. And if you want to see what happens when death, beauty, and ritual collide in the modern world, watch our documentary on Madame Lalauries' New Orleans. Behind the glamour of the French Quarter lies a city haunted not just by ghosts, but by rituals gone horribly wrong. From secret societies to locked attic doors, the masks worn there were far more than metaphor. Or step even deeper into the past, where belief in the afterlife wasn't theater, but law. In ancient Egypt's most cursed rituals, we uncovered how burial magic, soul traps, and spiritual warfare shaped one of the most iconic death cultures in history. Some of their rites echo Halloween more than we'd like to admit. Please like, share, subscribe. Good night.